Every city has secrets. But in this city, one secret walked the streets every night. A rich man, who never slept in his own mansion. Instead, he left his golden gates wide open, walked past the glowing streetlights, and lay down on the same cold park bench. People whispered. Some said he was cursed. Others said he was mad. But one curious boy decided to follow him, and what he found would change his life forever. On the edge of the city stood a mansion that people only admired from the outside. Its tall iron gates looked heavy enough to keep out the whole world. The walls were white, polished, and shining like marble. The garden was filled with roses, trimmed as if a royal gardener lived inside. But every night, when the city lights began to glow, that mansion turned into a dark shadow. No lamps in the windows. No sound of laughter. No music or TV playing behind the curtains. It was strange, because the man who owned it was one of the richest men in the city. Yet, instead of resting in his golden bed, he walked out every evening with only a long brown coat on his back, and went straight to the park. There, on the same wooden bench, he would lie down and close his eyes until morning. People whispered about him everywhere. At the market, at the bus stop, even at church on Sundays. One woman said, "He must be cursed. What rich man chooses a cold bench over a soft bed?" A taxi driver argued, "No, he's not cursed. He's hiding something. Maybe there are spirits in that mansion. That's why he runs away at night." Children made jokes too. They would laugh and point. "There goes the mad rich man. The one who owns a palace but sleeps on wood." But among those children, and among the many people watching, was one boy whose curiosity grew stronger each day. His name was Chike. Chike was poor. He sold roasted corn by the roadside with his mother to survive. Every night, as he fanned the fire and watched the corn crackle on the grill, his eyes followed the rich man. He watched him walk slowly past the shining streetlights. He watched him tighten his coat and lie down on the same bench, night after night. Chike did not laugh like the other children. He did not gossip like the adults. He only asked himself one burning question. Why? Why would a man with so much choose to live like someone with nothing? And slowly, that question began to burn inside Chike so strongly that he knew he would one day have to find out for himself. Days turned into weeks. And still, the man's routine never changed. At exactly 9 o'clock every night, he walked out of his mansion, his footsteps slow but steady, his face hidden under the brim of his old brown hat. He passed the same streets, the same lamp posts, until he reached the same bench in the park. And there, he slept. Chike could no longer ignore the questions in his head. Each evening, while fanning the fire under the roasting corn, he found his eyes drifting away from the customers and locking onto the man's lonely figure. One night, as he packed up what little was left of the unsold corn, he turned to his mother. "Mama, why does that man sleep on a bench when he has a house?" His mother frowned, shaking her head quickly. "Don't concern yourself with the lives of rich people, my son. They carry secrets too heavy for us to understand. Just sell your corn and come home." But her words did not stop the fire of curiosity burning in him. If anything, they made it stronger. That night, after his mother had gone to sleep, Chike sat by the small window of their tiny room, staring out at the city lights. His thoughts raced. What if Mama is wrong? What if the man is not cursed, not mad, but hiding something big? Something nobody else has seen. He could not shake the feeling that the bench and the mansion were connected by some invisible chain of mystery. The next evening, he made up his mind. When the man left his gates and stepped into the night, Chike would follow. His heart pounded as he rehearsed it in his mind. He would stay quiet. He would stay in the shadows. He would not make a sound until he discovered the truth. That night, when the church clock struck 9, the mansion gates opened as usual. The man appeared, coat buttoned, hat pulled low, walking with the same calm steps. From a distance, Chike's small figure slipped out of the corner of the street. Silent. Watching. following. And so began the boy's secret journey. A journey into the shadows of the night, chasing a mystery no one else dared to touch. The night was quiet, but for Chike, every sound seemed louder. The chirping of crickets, the distant bark of a stray dog, the slow echo of the man's shoes against the empty street. Chike followed closely but carefully. He stayed just far enough behind that the man would not notice. Every time the man stopped to adjust his coat, Chike froze like a statue, pressing himself against the walls of old buildings. The city looked different at night. Shadows stretched long and deep. The warm glow of the daytime was gone. Now there were broken lamps, cracked pavements, and windows that looked like watching eyes. Chike's heart thumped in his chest. What if Mama was right? What if I am chasing a ghost? What if he turns and catches me? But his legs kept moving. The man walked farther away from the busy streets, farther away from the shining lights of shops and houses. Soon, they entered a narrow road no one used anymore. The air smelled of dust and rain-soaked wood. Finally, the man stopped in front of a building. Its roof was bent, its walls scarred by time, and its windows broken like empty eyes. Chike gasped softly. It was an old orphanage. The sign above the door had faded, but the letters were still there, crooked and broken. St. Mary's Home for Children. The man pushed the rusty door open and stepped inside. Chike waited a moment, his hands trembling, before creeping in after him. The air inside was heavy with dust. The floor creaked under every step. Cobwebs hung in the corners. But what struck Chike most were the drawings on the wall. Faint chalk drawings. Little stick figures holding hands. Names scratched beside them in shaky handwriting. And there, in the middle of it all, the rich man knelt on the floor. His shoulders bent. His hands pressed together. His lips moving, whispering names only he remembered. He was not a man running from his mansion. He was a man running back to his past. Chike's eyes widened. His breath caught in his throat. And for the first time, he understood. He had stepped into a place not haunted by ghosts, but by memories. Chike tried to stay quiet, but the dust on the floor betrayed him. His foot pressed down on a piece of broken wood. Crack. The sound echoed through the empty orphanage. The man turned sharply. His eyes, hidden beneath the brim of his hat, locked on the boy in the shadows. For a long moment, silence filled the room. Only the faint whistle of the wind passed through the broken windows. Finally, the man spoke. His voice was calm but heavy. "Why are you following me, boy?" Chike's lips trembled. His throat felt dry. But he forced the words out. I wanted to know. Why do you sleep on a bench when you have a mansion?" The man's shoulders dropped. He sighed deeply, as if the question had been waiting for years. Slowly, he turned his gaze back to the chalk drawings on the wall. "Because this was my first home." Chike frowned, confused. "Your home. But this is an orphanage." The man nodded slowly. "Yes. I grew up here. I was left at that very door when I was only a baby. My parents never came back. I don't even know their names." He lifted a trembling hand and touched one of the faded names on the wall. "These were my brothers and sisters. Not by blood but by suffering. We starved together. We cried together. We dreamed of families that never came." Chike's chest tightened. He had never heard a rich man speak like this. The nights were the worst. Cold beds. Empty stomachs. We would lie awake, whispering to each other, promising that one day life would be better. But for many of them, that day never came. They died young, forgotten by the world. The man's voice cracked, but he did not stop. "I swore that if I ever escaped poverty, I would never let myself forget what it felt like to be one of them. To be unwanted. To be invisible." He paused, then turned his eyes back to Chike. For the first time, the boy saw tears glistening in them. "That is why I cannot sleep in my mansion. It is too soft. Too warm. too far from the truth. But on a bench, when the cold bites my bones, when the ground hardens my back, I remember. And I stay human. Chike swallowed hard, his young mind spinning. This was not madness. This was not a curse. This was a wound too deep for wealth to ever heal. And in that moment, the boy understood. Sometimes the richest hearts are the ones that never stop bleeding. The man lowered himself onto the dusty floor, sitting cross-legged like a tired old teacher in front of his classroom. He gestured for Chike to come closer. Hesitant but curious, the boy stepped forward until he could see the lines of sorrow etched deep across the man's face. The man drew a long breath before speaking again. Man, I did not escape poverty by luck, boy. I escaped it by hunger, by sweat, and by pain. His voice grew steadier, stronger, as if the memories lit fire inside him. Man, at 14, I ran from this orphanage. I had no shoes, no family, and no one to trust. But I had 2 hands, and I used them. I worked in the markets, carrying loads until my back nearly broke. I polished shoes. I cleaned gutters. I slept under bridges, telling myself each night, one day, this will not be my life. Chike leaned forward, his eyes wide. I saved every coin. I watched, I listened, I learned. When others spent their money on bread, I bought books. I studied numbers, business, trade. Slowly, I grew. I opened a small shop. Then another. Then a company. And after many years, I became what people call rich. But money does not heal hunger. Money does not erase the cold. Even today, when I lie in a warm bed, I can still feel the hard ground beneath my bones. I can still taste the nights of emptiness. He pulled something from his pocket, a folded sheet of paper, wrinkled from use. He handed it to Chike. Chike unfolded it carefully. His eyes widened. It was a list of names. Dozens of names. Every night, I take part of my wealth and give it away. To children like I once was. To mothers with nothing. To fathers who cannot feed their families. I do it quietly, because charity with noise is pride, not kindness. Chike stared at the names, his hands trembling. The bench, the cold air, the sleepless nights, they remind me why I must keep giving. If I rest in comfort too long, I may forget. And the day I forget, I will become like the men who once ignored me as a starving boy. The man's eyes softened, though his voice carried weight. Never chase riches to forget your pain. Chase them to heal someone else's. Chike felt his chest tighten. His young heart carried 1,000 questions, but only one escaped his lips. And if you keep giving, sir, what will be left for you? The man smiled faintly, his face lit by the pale moonlight through a broken window. Enough. Always enough. For a man who remembers the cold will never run out of reasons to keep warm. In that broken orphanage, among faded chalk drawings and whispers of forgotten children, a boy saw the truth. The richest man in the city was also its quietest servant. The night after their meeting, Chike could not sleep. The man's words replayed in his mind like a song he could not forget. He saw the chalk drawings. He heard the names whispered in the dark. He felt the weight of the list of families who depended on the man's secret kindness. By morning, he had made up his mind. He would return to the park that evening, not to spy, but to sit beside the man, to learn more, to understand how one heart could carry so much pain and still give so much love. That night, when the church bell rang 9 times, Chike ran to the park. His breath was heavy, his small legs quick with excitement. But when he reached the familiar bench, it was empty. The man was gone. At first, Chike thought he was late. He looked around, scanning the trees, the path, the street beyond. No sign of him. Then, on the bench, he noticed something. A plain white envelope, placed carefully where the man always rested his head. And on the front, written in bold, careful handwriting, was one word. Chike. The boy froze. His hands shook as he picked it up. Inside was a bundle of crisp notes, more money than he and his mother had ever seen in their lives. But it was not the money that made his chest tighten. It was the small piece of paper folded inside. On it, the man had written just one line. Never let comfort make you forget the cold. Chike pressed the paper to his chest, his eyes filling with tears. He looked up at the night sky, at the stars that seemed brighter than ever, and whispered to himself, "Chike, I will not forget. I promise." The mansion remained dark. The bench remained empty. But in the heart of a young boy, a new light was born. A light of kindness. A light of remembrance. And he would carry it for the rest of his life. Because true wealth is not the size of your mansion, but the size of your heart.